Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at a RuneCraft deck. This is a pretty straightforward RuneCraft deck. It does have a pretty much Mysteria base. We've looked at a lot of Mysteria decks. There are so many different variations on Mysteria at the moment, and most of them are evolving very quickly. I expected there to be one solid list floating around, but because the engine is just so versatile, it seems to be that there's pretty much every couple of days or every 3 to 4 days there's some new variant that's populating ladder more than the others, mainly I think to counter the mirror match, which isn't super uncommon. So this one does take in a couple of runes, which is not a bad option. I haven't actually got to use them much yet because of course to use them you do have to get them in your hand, and of course 2 Nova Flares as a decent extra board removal. Mysterian Spell Nerd has actually come in quite handy and been quite a nice card, and this one of course is top ending with Flame Destroyers using a more spell boosty engine overall. And I'm assuming Rooney mostly is not for Prophecy of Doom but for Prophecy of Boon, as it does draw you cards, recover play points, and of course is very easy to spell boost. So I reckon that's probably what the key to Rooney is. As I mentioned though, I haven't really got to use her much, but we're going to get right into this and check it out. Now, kicking us off, one of the matches that isn't usually as favoured because Blood has a much earlier win condition than this Rune deck typically does, is of course Blood. So going up against that is going to be pretty okay with this hand actually. So while it would be a little worrying if I had bricked, if you brick against a Blood matchup at all, you can be in some serious trouble because their early game is really strong. But if you can kick things off fairly early with a decent hand, you're actually looking at a very promising matchup. So of course I do want to favour the insight on turn 1, removing the the bat. Not too much of an issue there. We want to remove the bats just so they don't try and pick extra damage off or try and go for any kind of extra removal. Oh, and Knight of Mysteria, so I can try and get more Mysteria cards. Mostly Anne, which is great. We did manage to pull one of those. And since we have 2 Mysterian Knowledge, these Annes are actually going to be fairly good. Of course, ideally we need to get Mysterian removal spells. And our luck's on our side. We did manage to pull off one of those, as it does just allow us to both deal more damage and remove things much easier than going for a 2-2 Golem in the Blood matchup. And of course, the start of this match is looking fairly decent. Both these cards aren't really a problem to deal with. So we do have our Mysterian Knowledge, which turned into the missile. And we can quite easily remove all of this, while also aiming for a decent Fate's Hand play. And of course, our Light Mage. So these are the kind of hands you really want to be able to pull off, where you can get really early boosting going. And I really love the Mysterian Right. It comes in very handy. It's a very strong ward. And of course our opponent just aiming to deal as much damage as they can. Doesn't look like they're doing too great, as they are lacking any kind of big swing turn yet, which is kind of what Blood wants. So if they keep allowing us to build a board, they're going to be in some serious trouble. Salome, okay. The 2-5, you don't see it a lot, but I suppose Blood's trying to get that to work now. And we burned not the best card for this matchup in particular. And we've planned out this hand pretty well. We're going to be able to get our Anne, we're going to be able to get our Anne Sorcery, because if I don't have more Annes, I always go for Sorcery first, so that I can guarantee having that when I need it. Unless, of course, I am in a situation where I have to use the defense to even survive a turn. But we're in a position now where we're not really in any trouble. Seraphic Blade can hit Vera, which is one of the key reasons people run Seraphic Blade, is to hit things like Vera, Summit Temple, Lion Temples, things like that that can be removed pretty easily with them. Or, of course, other big 2-drops. Like, of course, and Summon and things like that in the mirror match. So I really just wanted to lower the cost of things at the moment. And of course I needed a way to trigger Seraphic Blade. But now that that's been done, we're pretty well set. We're going to be able to set up a ward, remove the 3-2, go for 1 extra damage, and also play this Flame Destroyer. So we have an absolutely insane hand. And by the looks of it, our opponent has absolutely nothing they can do against that. Ideally they need at least a 10 damage to hit that. And with that last game, based on the self-damage that the opponent had, they would have been very close to a lethal with Dark Feast Bat. I didn't exactly count how much it was, but they would have had to have been in the upper ends, close to 10. Whether they were at it or not, it was really just a matter of did they have it in hand, which obviously they probably didn't. And this hand, again, not too bad. This time we're looking at a more spell boosty end of the hand, which of course isn't a bad option. And while we did get Owen, I did decide to go for that spell boost early, as I didn't want to risk anything. And luckily for us, we did end up with a Mysteria knowledge anyway, so that's not a really bad way to go. We're going to be able to play Missile and Knowledge most likely. And since they did play an Owen, we actually do have a target, so that is even better. Of course, we might have got our Mysteria knowledge and end up with a Circle, which would have been good too, but we did end up with another Missile, which honestly, right now, is the better outcome. Witch Snap. Ooh, looks like we're playing against a Earth Rune variant instead. And obviously Owen is used to pull out of the Magic Founder. After, of course, you've seen my video on Earth Rune, they're probably playing a very similar variant. This one, of course, is now running Beast-Faced Mage. As I said, a lot of the rune decks are still evolving quite rapidly as far as it goes, which is really interesting. So I had to make a little decision here. I wouldn't have been able to play Light Mage if I had went for Missile. So I just decided, screw it, we'll just play the Light Mage out. We'll fill our hand up to 8 cards, we're going to still be able to draw just fine. And this way we guarantee we get the Mysterian right, and we set up a 5-1 that pretty much has to be dealt with at this point. You can't really afford to take a 5 damage swing to face. Because they did go for the Golem, that's not a bad play on their part. Since we don't have any way to banish that Golem, we do have to kill it. We can't afford to take a 7 damage swing. So we are going to give them a lot of these Earth Sigils here to use. And they also got the Founder, so they're going to be looking to get the pings off this card as much as possible. And based on what they got, the 1 Ritual and 3 Golems was probably not the best turnout for them. We are going to, however, want to remove all of this. So we're going to be using as much of our removal as we can. Which actually worked out pretty well. I mean, the Fiery Embrace ended up low enough, we ended up with the Fate's Hand that we could use, and then go straight into a Flame Destroyer. It's really hard to come back from this sort of turn. And our opponent did end up just foregoing their turn completely. And I probably should have went for the Witch of Foresight and aimed for a 1 damage ping, but I took the safer route of blocking up our board, even though we're basically guaranteed to win at this point, because our opponent, of course, skipping last turn was pretty much them giving up. And it does allow us to go for victory, obviously, so couldn't have asked for a much better turn. And we ended up top decking Magic Missile for an exact lethal anyway. Not a shabby way to end the match. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. While I didn't get to use Rooney, everything else in this deck still functions extremely well, and Rooney I think just makes a really good option as far as draw power goes for the most part. And of course, if you do end up in a much more drawn out kind of control matchup, which is less likely, Prophecy of Doom of course could come in handy. Even in a potential mirror, Prophecy of Doom could come in handy if of course you manage to block out Mysterian Prodigy. But overall, the main aim is of course in a mirror match, take as little damage as possible while dealing as much as you can, and of course any other matchup is just to reach Mysterian Prodigy, get your Ant Sorcery and end the game. There may be a potential switch out where you can just swap Rooney in for the silver that can drop cost of cards, as that does combo really nicely for the early Mysterian Prodigy play, and I've seen a lot of decks run that as well, so I would definitely recommend giving that a go. We may cover it in a few videos later, I don't know yet what I want to do, but honestly, pretty solid. Out of all the rune decks I've played in the last, say, 5 to 6 days as of making this video, this one has been the most solid for me personally, as I felt like a lot of the rune decks were being outclassed by other decks at the moment, because a lot of people are playing Sword, a lot of people are teching really well against Rune, and of course Rune matchups are teching against Rune, so you've got mirror matches that are much harder to win. It's much less a 50-50 and more a who goes first situation, which is really not good. So if you go first, you pretty much have a 60% over a 50%, and it's not a good way to go, which obviously sucks. It's much better to have 50-50 than a 60-40. So if you guys did enjoy this video, if you did, hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find text in the description below. Until next time, see ya.